All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are here to talk about microschooling. It's a really exciting night. We are so excited to have a few guests here from Prenda, which they are just the microschooling gurus, and they'll be able to tell us everything we need to know. Real quick, I'm Ruth with the Reform Alliance, and proud to be here representing this incredible organization. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to ensuring all K-12 students receive a world-class education. And really our mission and what we spend every day doing is connecting with parents and leaders throughout this state to ensure that the education opportunities available to our students and families are just top notch. And so one of those options, and a fairly new-ish concept, at least to us here in Arkansas, is microschooling. And certainly this is an interesting time for all of us, and especially those of us in the education world, as we sort of just navigate through what the new normal looks like this fall. We got a little taste of it over the spring, at the end of the spring semester, and we're certainly going full force into it in the fall. So as COVID is changing all areas of our life, the education realm of our lives are certainly one of the most important to ensure that our students receive a great education wherever that may be. So we want to explain a little bit more about microschooling. You may have heard it called pandemic pod or a learning pod or a parent pod, but we've received a ton of questions from you all, a ton of interest from families all throughout Arkansas. And I am going to turn it over to Rochelle and to Sarah. Rochelle, I'll introduce you first to tell us what microschooling is, what they do over at Prenda, and then we'll sort of dive into some of y'all's questions. So, Rochelle?
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate being here. I'm excited to be in the great state of Arkansas, coming live from Arizona. Yeah. Super excited to, I love talking about Prenda. I love talking about what we do and how things work for our students. So I'm going to share my screen and just hold on. Sometimes I have technical difficulties, so just give me a second.
I think we're all fighting that right now. We're all sort of taking it day by day.
I forget that I have way too many windows open in my row. Okay, so now I'm going to try to share my screen.
Sure.
And we'll go in present mode. Okay, so let's talk about what Prenda is. With our little tagline is neighborhood school reimagined. So if you can think back to sort of like the one-room schoolhouse, it's kind of a helpful starting point. One of the other things to think about when you think about this is, if you, just to give you, as I talk about this, something that you can sort of just be thinking, kind of hang your hat on this idea. If you made a Venn diagram, there would be 4 circles, and in those circles, you would have homeschooling, traditional schooling, online schooling, and Montessori. And so traditional schooling gives us social, all that interaction. Montessori gives us being self-led. Homeschooling is just this comfortable environment, and online schooling gives the opportunity to use softwares to meet a kid where they are. So that's just sort of a starting point for that. So let's talk about a couple of the things when we first started. So my intention here is to get a lot of information in really fast. So if I talk too fast, I'm sorry. If I forget to breathe, that might happen, but I want to tell you everything, and I want to leave a lot of time for questions. So just know if I'm talking fast, that's why. So when we very first started, this guy named Kelly Smith, 2013, decided he wanted to teach his son, who was 8, how to code, went to the local public library in Mesa, Arizona, and said, can I give a free coding class to neighborhood kids? Because he figured, I'm going to teach my son, I might as well teach other kids too. They said, yeah, that would be great. So he and his kids made these posters that said, come learn to make a video game, put them up all over this part of our city that's kind of a low income area. And it just said, come make a video game on Mondays after school. So kids started to come, and then more and more kids started to come. And it grew really dramatically. And there were a couple of things that Kelly learned in this time. One of my favorite things that he learned is this 5th grader comes in who hates school and hates math, he's not a school kid. And he's building his video game, and he's trying to get the right trajectory for his rocket. And he says, and he's Googling trigonometric functions as a 5th grader. And it was oh, it's really interesting. And then as this grew, other libraries were like, hey, we want to do this too. So Kelly shows them how to do their in their libraries. This is how you do this. And in most places, he found somebody that knew how to code to be the director, like to kind of run it. But in this one library in East Mesa, he did not have anyone that knew how to code. And it was these two older women librarians. And he's like, here we go. And they started this code club and it went really, really well. Interestingly, went better than any of the code clubs that had a coding expert. And so one of the foundations of Prenda came from that time. And it is that if the adult in the room does not have all the answers, kids are really empowered to figure things out for themselves. So when we talk about what we do in Prenda, that is a foundational premise. And this slide is learning is a choice, teaching is impossible. I'm a former high school geometry teacher and algebra. This isn't to be insulting to teachers. The point is you can't force knowledge into a kid's head. They have to choose to learn it. And if you have a kid who has had pain in their educational environment, they're going to have armor on. Like we talk a lot about armor at Prenda, and this idea that when a human being is damaged in some way, they take that part of themselves and they make it no longer accessible to the world because they don't ever want to feel that kind of pain again. And that happens with kids in their education a lot. Might be a specific subject, like I'm not a math person, I can't do art. And it's these, I think all of us have this moment that we remember from our early education where somebody told us we couldn't do something or we had done something wrong, and we've carried that for a long time. And so as we talk about this armor, one of the really beautiful things is that in a Prenda class, the goal for us is to be able to give a place for a kid to be able to take that armor off. But specific to this learning is a choice piece. When kids are armored up, they're in a fight or flight like mode, and you can't learn in fight or flight. Your brain, you can't access the part of your brain that really learns. And so we have to create a safe, loving environment for kids for them to be able to learn. So that's a really important part of what we do. I don't know why hold on. I went really fast. I didn't mean to.
You were on a roll. That was good stuff.
So we have a mission that's 2 words: empower learners. A learner is a person obsessed with gaining new knowledge, developing, you guys can all read, or many of you can read, developing new skills and mastering new things, and to help someone find power, the ability to do anything and become anything. That is what we do. And sometimes people are like, think our mission statement is boring, this empower learners, but when you break it down to like what, I've started to quote myself. I rarely think that I'm smart enough to have said anything worth quoting, but this is the thing that I've been saying recently. It's like, imagine a world where kids can create without instructions. And I'm just like, that's what empowering learners is about. It's about this kids being able to do things without being told how to do them and figuring it out. So in Prenda, our model is broken into 3 parts. Our day is broken into 3 parts: conquer, collaborate, and create. As I describe this, I'm going to describe a little more specifically our 3rd through 8th version of this. We have K2 as well, and it's very similar, but we kind of call it different flavors of Prenda. So, so just know K2 is a little bit different. And when we get into the question time, if we need to get more specific into how K2 looks different, we can do that. So the very first thing that happens in a Prenda classroom when they come in at the beginning of the day and start Conquer is they have a community circle. So in our little kids, they might do growth mindset. Like we have some growth mindset curriculum, which means them learning how to say, like when they say, I can't, like the automatic for a lot of kids in a Prenda class is to correct them and say yet. Like that's a growth mindset, is I can't do this, and then be like, you can't do it yet. Or they might do yoga, or they might do a meditation in the little kids class. And the older kids, they do something to connect as a group. And then they tell each other, they share with each other verbally their goals in reading, writing, grammar, and math for the day. So Conquer is called Conquer because in the academic world, it's like, it's the mountain to climb. And so as they're climbing their mountain of academics, that's what Conquer time is. So reading, writing, grammar, and math. Hold on, I pushed my space bar and it's lagging. So let me see if I'm gonna jump 7 slides again, I'm sure of it. Yep, see, told you. I'm giving away all my good stuff ahead of time.
I like it, I like it.
Okay, here's Conquer. This is one of our little kid classes. So our little kids spend about 40 minutes a day on devices, learning how to do math and literacy. That's the only time in the day they spend on devices. So for our older kids, this Conquer time is 90 to 120 minutes, depending on how the class has been set up. One of the things I love the most about it is each student has made a long-term goal for each of their for each of their subjects. And so get this, and I just get really excited about this because it's so different than normal school. I'm just going to call it normal school. Hopefully nobody's offended by that. Traditional school.
No one knows what that is anymore, so no one can be
Oh,
offended.
what you've seen as school. One of my favorite parts is, especially as a former teacher, is that every single kid gets to work exactly where they are. This may mean that you're a 6th grader who is capable of doing 8th grade math, and so you get to do 8th grade math. There's nothing to hold you back. Or it might mean that you're a 5th grader that had gaps in your earlier years of math, and so you need to fill in those gaps so you can work in 3rd grade math, and you can set your goals in such a way that you can move through that. I have lots of stories about really cool kids that have, like we had, this last year, we had a pilot classroom in a public school. So we partnered with a public school and had a pilot Prenda classroom. And there was a kid there that came toward the end of the year, like probably beginning of 2nd semester. And he was labeled a behavior problem and was told he could be kicked out of school or join the Prenda class. And he came into the Prenda class, and what he discovered when he got into our tools is that he's brilliant at math, and there was nothing holding him back. So he was, as a 6th grader, he did all of 6th grade math in like 3 months, and then headed into 7th grade math. And as the superintendent came in and talked to him, he told her, he's like, I used to be a behavior issue. But the powerful thing when you hand kids, like we have this tendency not to trust kids to make great choices. When we hand kids a loving environment and power to make choices, especially if they haven't had a lot of armor put on them, they do really remarkable things. And if they have had a lot of armor put on them, they may take a little bit of time before they start doing remarkable things, but continue to love them, and they will. And so during this Conquer time, they have the framework of time, and they get to choose whether they do math first or writing first. They're going to get all their work done. They've set their goals for the day, but they get to choose how they do it. And even just that amount of choice makes them feel so powerful in their own lives. So all of our softwares are mastery based. They align with standards, and they give us a really good sense on the backside, on the data side, of how our kids are doing. And where it says working at your frontier, it isn't really learning unless you don't already know it, because otherwise you've already learned it. So in the Conquer time of Prenda, kids are constantly at their learning frontier, which for especially like perfectionist type students, not that any of us are any of that, it's really difficult when they get something wrong. And so one of the things that they learn in this time is the value and power of failure, and how much you can gain when you fail. I mean, when you think, like the most perfect example is a kid learning how to walk. It's not like the kid falls over and they're like, oh, I'm never trying that again. Right. You just get up and they try again, and they may go a little bit further. And that's what we're talking about when we're doing Conquer time through this time. Okay, that was a lot of words for Conquer.
And we also, not to interrupt you, but we actually just shared a video too in the chat, the Conquer video you guys have on your YouTube page. It's just so fantastic. So folks, don't watch it right now. Pay attention to this, but afterwards go back and find that link, and we'll post it on our social media pages as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Ruth, you're great. This is good stuff.
We're making it easy. Some really good info you guys put out.
So collaborate is the next part of the day. So if you imagine this, I didn't tell you some, by the way, I'm in Phoenix and it's really hot, even in my air conditioning. So I feel like I'm sweating away. So a micro school is 5 to 10 students, ideally in a 3-grade range, like K2, 3rd through 5th, 6th through 8th, although we do have wider ranges than that if it's necessary. Sometimes it happens because there's only one micro school and there isn't another option. Best case for somebody that has kids in 2 different age ranges is to be like, I'll guide this age, and get a really good friend you trust and be like, you guide that age, and then share that in the responsibility. So a lot of our the majority of our micro schools happen in homes. We do have some in churches, community centers, preschools that are serving school age students, tutoring centers. There's some of those kinds of things are being used, but the majority of them are in homes. So if you can imagine, and not all of them do this, but sort of like a traditional, like if you're trying to picture what this looks like, the picture before where the kids were around the table, that's Conquer time. And then they move into the living room, get a little more relaxed for Collaborate. So Collaborate is student-led. So first the guides model what that looks like, but as soon as the students are in a place, they start leading these experiences. So it's things like debate. So imagine teaching third, fourth, and fifth graders to debate, which is crazy because it's hard. But the cool thing about it is we live in a very, very polarized world. And so to be able to teach children at an early age to see two sides of an argument, to stand in somebody else's shoes, like what a valuable life skill that we've just given them. So debate, Socratic discussion, collaborative math puzzle, science projects. One of the ways we do history is they choose a person or a time and place in history and they all research it and come back and teach each other. So the principles of collaborate are communication, relationship building, and social interaction. And when you think about traditional school, unless you have a pretty, I stopped using the word progressive because it's really innovative. We're gonna say innovative leader. Yeah. Collaborate doesn't happen. Like if you collaborate, it's called cheating. But in our world, everybody has to collaborate with people. Like that is the world. And so to be able to give kids tools with the assistance of a guide to learn to work together with other people, even if they don't agree with them, is a really powerful gift that we give kids. And so like it says, they're applying their academics and they're working together. So the last part of the day is called create. And again, me and my slides. I don't even know. It's got a like 17-second lag. So create is, we have these create projects that we've built into our software. So the kids have a portal called Prenda World. They go into that portal and they click on the create button and it opens up this library of create projects. And they're in one of 4 categories: discover, invent, perform, and become. And I want to talk a little bit about the become piece because it's something that's foundational at the very beginning of our school years. So we do this, we've given guides a like framework for the first 2 weeks of school. And one of the really important parts of that, actually, I'm going to come back to create and talk about our core values for just a second. Maybe, maybe not. You guys, I'm not this bad usually on technology. So
it's late, it's hot, it's fine.
I think it's because my computer's too hot. Like it lags when it gets hot. I'm like, I can handle it. My computer should be able to handle it. So our core values, and they are what at every level of Prenda, we live by these, the students, the guides, and we as the Prenda team. So start with heart, dare greatly for any Brene Brown, Teddy Roosevelt fans out there, figure it out, foundation of trust, and learning over comfort. So when we have that first couple weeks of school, and one of the things that we do really early on is so you'll have to picture this because it's in a paper representation on the wall of their classroom. And there's a house. And the foundations and the outside of the house are our core values. And inside the house, they put their agreement, sort of like how we're going to treat each other throughout this school year, day to day. So that's inside that house. Next to the house is what we call the Autonomy Bridge. Because what we find is kids that come from a traditional model, and most kids have been raised with a punishment and reward system, carrot and stick. And it's really difficult to be intrinsically motivated when your whole life you have been taught through extrinsic motivation. And so one of the things that happens for our students is they have to cross this bridge from extrinsic to intrinsic, and we call it the Autonomy Bridge. And as they cross that, so one of the things we have in our software is an imaginary currency called coins that they can earn as they do different things during their day. But we get really excited when we know that a kid doesn't care about their coins anymore. When all of a sudden it's about the learning and not about the coins, that's when we know they're crossing the Autonomy Bridge. Yeah. So on the other side of the Autonomy Bridge is a mountain, which I'll come right back to. And on the other side of the mountain, every kid has created a representation of themselves called future you. And so it's whatever they see themselves being down the road. I visited a classroom in a rural community here in Arizona. And the guide was also the mom to a number of the students, and she was probably about 60, and she had fostered and then adopted 4 girls that were between like kindergarten and 3rd grade, which is just amazing in and of itself. So these girls had a really rough beginning, and to look at their future you and see, one of them wanted to be a gymnastics gym owner. So she makes her future you and all of the details of her gymnastics gym. But the cool part is, on her mountain, which is like you have to climb your mountain to get to your future you, on her mountain, she had written like graduate from college because she wanted that's part of her becoming a gym owner. Mm-hmm. And so when she's doing math and struggling, and it feels very arbitrary. She can look at her mountain and say, oh, this is why I'm doing math, because I need this to get to this point. We had a 6-year-old in a different class, but in the same town, who was really struggling with math. And she came up to her guide and was crying and just really having a hard time with this problem. And the guide said, do you want to keep climbing your mountain, or do you want to just quit? And the little girl thought about it for a minute, stopped crying, and went and sat down and did her work. And I talked to the little girl's mom about a month later, and she said that one day she was struggling, the mom was struggling, and her daughter said, Mom, do you want to keep climbing your mountain, or do you want to just quit? And I just thought, how cool is it that these values like carry over through everything we do? So let me go back to create. I know I just jumped around.
That's okay.
Going backwards might be even worse than trying to go forward.
Gosh, I love the story though. It's so neat to see how students just implement little things that they learn. I mean, and it's funny when you're talking about debate, thinking, I'm sure all the parents are like, why are you teaching them debate? You know? So, I mean, I'm sure they're taking all kinds of things from this type of learning, but that, oh, what an awesome story. That's so awesome.
And that's one of like, and Sarah can, I mean, one of thousands of stories. I mean, and it's so cool to see like this movement that Prenda is creating. And right now it's been in Arizona, and we're just barely starting to expand other places. But seeing the movement that changes how parents parent, changes how kids think, you know, it's not just a place to send kids to school. Like, it's a very, very powerful environment that changes the entire community when you start to think like this. So Create is project-based. They go in, they choose a project. The really cool thing is if they don't find a project they're interested in that moment, there's a template where they get to create their own project. They can like write their own up. And if it works out really well, they can send it to us and we can put it in the library and give them credit. It's called Create. There's a product at the end of every project. It could be a digital or a physical product. So digital product like a PowerPoint or a movie, something like that. This girl, Macy, has a diorama. Could be a raft. I one day visited a class and they weren't in their class, and it was at a home, and I went and found them a little ways down a hill building a fort as a class, including a toilet, which I thought was really interesting. I'm not sure anybody was using it. Not sure you wanted to know that, but it was so cool that their create time was them. They took collaborate and create because they were doing it together, and they were building a fort out in the woods. And I was like, how cool is it when school can be in the woods? Like, that's one of my favorite things. Okay. So I think that's, once we can tell how many more slides there are, I think that's all I have to say. So I'm going to stop my share. And Ruth, hand it back to you. I forgot to have Sarah introduce herself. Sarah, will you tell us who you are? And Sarah's going to help us with some of our question answering.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Sarah Rayvon. I'm also here in Arizona. I love everything about education and education options for families. And we've got a lot of them here in Arizona, but nothing as cool as Prenda Microschools. And that came onto my radar a couple of years ago and has just exploded. I'm looking forward to my own 2 little guys joining a Prenda Microschool this year. And I just like Rochelle mentioned, the stories we hear from families that, I mean, just being a part of Prenda, like she mentioned, it's even kind of changed my parenting style. Just being a part of Prenda and hearing these stories and diving, deeper into the resources Prenda provides parents and our team, it really does change the way you look at the world, the way you interact with others. And like we've talked about, it's just a difficult world right now, and it's a difficult place for kids and kids in classrooms, and what our families are going through and what our kids are going through. And just and Prenda, I really think I was saying it's life-changing for families and for kids. And in a lot of cases, we see kids that are coming that have had a lot of hurts and have had a lot of struggles, and some cases not. And I love that it's a place for all of those kids. So it's just really, really cool. And I'm thrilled to be able to talk about Prenda. It's one of my favorite things to do. So happy to be here to answer questions.
I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you both for being here. And thanks to everyone jumping on. I'm monitoring your questions and trying to keep up. So I will do my best to make sure we get to all these. But again, we're talking with Prenda, and with representatives from Prenda. I'm sure y'all are Prenda. I mean,
We're Prenda.
This is it. But they will be able to answer all the questions. And if we don't get to all of them tonight before our hour is up, we will follow up with you. So keep asking the questions, and we promise we'll circle back with you guys and get all those answered. But I do want to jump into the questions because we have a ton of them, a ton of interest. And for those folks here in Arkansas, this is a fairly new concept to our state that we're working to adopt and be able to offer this to you all. So as we have continued to put out on our social media and on our website, contact our office if you are interested in putting your child into a micro school, and B, if you're interested in being a guide, and we will get into what being a guide means, and C, if you want both. So A, B, or C, it's pretty easy. So I'm gonna jump right into the questions, and ladies, whoever wants to answer, y'all just figure all that out. But really, I mean, and Rochelle, you got to, I think you explained very, very well what a micro school is, how it runs. You mentioned 5 to 10 students. So kind of, we saw the picture of what it looks like, you know, several students around a table in what looks like a home, but kind of tell me just, what is it? What is a micro school? Give me like the Webster Dictionary definition of it.
It's a place to come learn with a loving adult and really great tools that are used so that kids can maximize themselves. They can find themselves and get the most out of themselves in a shorter period of time than is typical to a school day.
So is it relatable to like a homeschooling co-op, or is it kind of explain that? Because I mean, as we hear, this is a question we've gotten a lot. Is it homeschooling?
It's similar. That probably is the closest, or the, like, again, the old school Laura Ingalls Wilder one-room schoolhouse, you know. The differences, I would say, so homeschool co-op, multiple families involved. The differences, depending on the type of co-op, usually co-ops have different people facilitating and taking turns. This one has one guide, generally speaking, who's facilitating all the time. And oftentimes in a homeschool co-op, it's just volunteer, where in different places, like in Arizona, where we have public funding, the guide can get paid. I know there's a little bit of funding in Arkansas with the effort to get more funding. And we're currently in Arizona, just to give a context of, so the first class was 2.5 years ago. Kelly guided 7 middle schoolers in his home. One of them was his. It was like the grand experiment, and he was making it up as he went. And by the end of 2018, we had about 30 students. And today we have about 3,300 students in Arizona. Wow. So it's grown really quickly here, and parents and guides are really, really happy.
Right. And I think another difference I just want to throw in there is that it's literally a child's complete education. Well, I don't want to say complete education, but in a co-op, it's like maybe we get together and do a subject here, a subject there, and then mom is also teaching at home other subjects. This is a child goes to their micro school, gets their academics done. There's no homework in a Prenda micro school, which everywhere we go, all the kids go, yay, no homework. But plenty of time left over for kids to dive deeper into things they're interested in. My little guy is going to take up violin this year. He's always wanted to do that, but he was at a very rigorous school last year, and there was no time for extra things like that. He really wants to learn the violin. So there's lots of extra time to dive into things deeper, maybe at home with family and what maybe the family's interested in, but they're getting all of their school day done during their micro school time.
Right. And do the micro schools typically run like from 8 to 2:30 or 8 to 3, or does that vary by state?
Typically, it's going to vary by state because of different hourly requirements. Like, for example, Colorado has more hour requirements than Arizona does. And so, and then whether it's public or private, that will, and also by the needs of the community that's involved in it. Like if you're talking about a community that needs a full day for their kids because both parents work, then there are ways to extend that day to help parents be able to have this as an option and still have it be Prenda.
Right. One question I just saw pop is how it's done legally within the state of Arkansas, and I'm sure the legality is different in different states. I know, in Arizona, y'all may do it one way. I do know in Arkansas, just to answer that question, it would be considered kind of under the homeschool realm, just like Rochelle was just saying. So you would basically, for those who are asking the question, you would have to fill out the homeschool notice of intent form, which can be found on our website. If you pop over to the reformalliance.org and click at the top under education options, click on that, and it lists all the education options available in Arkansas. And then also in the helpful links section has a link to both the homeschooling laws in Arkansas, as well as that notice of intent form that you would have to fill out. So just to answer that question really quickly, I think that's very important, and thank y'all for asking it. So we talked about kind of how the day schedule works. So it sounds like they would just be whatever we would require in Arkansas, which I believe is 8 to 3, I believe. Don't quote me. I've been out of school for a really long time, but it's something like that. But so it makes sense. So it's just like going to a school. And then I love the point you made, Sarah, about then they can go home and just concentrate on other things and not be boggled down with homework, and the parents not be boggled down with that homework. I mean, that's just an incredible way to offer this schooling.
And I don't want to think that it's not, I mean, this is, I mean, as we've talked about being mastery based, I mean, we really, I mean, the kids, it's not like, oh, we're just sitting back here and doing minimum academics. I mean, high quality curriculum, so much thought put into the software and so much put into that. I mean, parents know exactly where their kids are at, you know, at any point, which is really great. There's benchmark testing. So parents, you know, for education purposes, parents can see, okay, my child is here, you know, I love that about Prenda, because it is there's so much information provided in terms of knowing where your kids are at and helping them to be successful.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the guides. And so I know, as much as I've read about the guides, they're not teaching, but I mean, what are they doing besides guiding? But you know, kind of talk through that with us.
So one of my this is like my favorite thing. Well, there's many favorite things I have about Prenda, but the guides are really incredible. And we very intentionally do not have an education requirement for our guides. We have anywhere from like barely graduated from high school to PhDs that are guiding Prenda classrooms at this point.
So they don't have to be a teacher then.
They don't have to be a teacher. And the reason that matters to us a lot, one thing is the majority of what teachers go to school to do is learning how to deliver content. So content delivery is a huge part of that. And our content delivery is happening in the software. So we've eliminated that as a need for a skill from our guides. The piece that matters the most is they need to be able to emotionally support children in a safe and loving way. We give them a lot of training around that, and then ongoing coaching. The place that matters the most for me in that is that and I always talk about women. We have male guides and they're amazing. It's just a really small percentage. There are a lot of women out there in this world who were never given, their life did not afford them the opportunity to go to college. And as a result, they may be working in a lower paying job than somebody who got to go to college, but it just didn't, the cards didn't fall that way for them. But they've lived their life in a way that they know kids and they know how to like reach kids. We want those women and men to be guides in Prenda classrooms, because they will do a brilliant job. They can make a better wage than they could in other places. And we value their life experience and everything they bring to the table for emotional support. So as far as requirements for guides, having some sort of organized experience with kids, it could be voluntary or paid. It could be being a soccer coach. It could be being a piano teacher. It could be being a certified public school teacher. Kind of runs the gamut. And then also having exhibited some sort of leadership. And those are the big requirements as far as like coming in to be a guide.
Yeah, well, and one question I just saw pop that I definitely want to address is they're saying, so do you want parents to trust individuals who are not certified teachers to teach our children? So I'd like for you to clarify that the guides are not teaching, they're just kind of guiding through the day.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I absolutely have 2 daughters and they both are with guides that are not teachers, and those guides do a brilliant job. And the piece that a certified teacher would bring to the table again is the content. And so my girls get to choose like where they're getting their content. It could be from, let's say Khan Academy is one of our math softwares. Yeah, and that's how they can watch the video to learn how to do that, or they can copy and paste the topic into Google and find somebody else that's explained how to do that. The really powerful piece of this, and I would say when you're talking about formal educators, again, I was a teacher. When you're talking about formal educators, there's a certain type of educator that is a really great fit for Prenda. And then there's an educator that is probably not a great fit for Prenda. And I define this person as the teacher who takes validation from being the holder of the information, like the keeper of the knowledge, for them to choose how and when to distribute that. And we're saying that belongs to children. And we want to give them all of the tools to be able to access whatever it is they need to learn and to understand how to learn. That's their job, is teach a child how to learn, and game over. They're never going to stop.
Yeah. So do you see a lot of parents becoming guides, or not so much?
Yeah, we actually have, it'll be interesting. I haven't seen this year's, but from 2 years ago, of our parents, 25% of the people who were parents became guides after they had their kids in a Prenda class.
Oh, after, wow, how interesting.
And then, so some initially go in and they're guiding their own kids, and they've decided to do that from the get-go. And then others are like, no, I wouldn't do this. And they put their kids in somebody else's micro school. And then they watch that and they're like, I could do this. And so they start their own micro school, which is really cool. And sometimes parents are like, I am definitely guiding my own kids. And others are like, I cannot guide my own kids, but I'll send them somewhere else and I'll guide somebody else's kids. So there's sort of like the whole mix of that.
Yeah, well, and that's one thing that just fascinates me so much about microschooling is, a big thing that we keep seeing is parents have to go back to work, right? I mean, they've either been out of work for months or they've been working from home. And we saw last spring, some folks were really struggling with having to do virtual schooling with their kids and having to work from home and having to do, just home things.
Yeah.
But this is such a neat concept, because I do think that we will continue to see families helping families. And so if one family maybe can live off a one income household and another can't, they're able to send their child to a family friend or to a trusted source, and make sure they get that good education, and then parents can return to work. I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer. I mean, because it's such just an interesting and different time. But as we've seen over the last several months, it's time to sort of get back to some sense of normal, whatever that may be.
I just want to say, I think that also people are, after what we all went through in the spring, and I like to say, my friends that are traditional homeschoolers say that wasn't homeschooling, that was crisis schooling. We're getting all these papers taught, thrown at us, and what are we doing? This is chaos, and plus we're quarantined, we're inside, we can't leave the house. So that, I think what happened though through that is that parents also realize, what? Maybe there's something else out there. I was always maybe too nervous to just kind of maybe jump in and try something new. But I think what we've all learned is, there's no harm in trying something new, seeing what else is out there. Now's the time. We've kind of been given this time in history and these innovative options that are kind of here. And it's maybe now is the time to try something new that you would have never maybe tried before.
Yeah. Well, so tell me, Rochelle, talk me through the curriculum. Because I know you mentioned Khan Academy for math, and we love working with them. They're a fantastic group. So the guides are not coming up with the curriculum.
No, we have I'm actually going to try to pull up this document.
That'd be great. I think that's a concern I'm kind of seeing in our chat, about folks who aren't, who aren't certified teachers teaching. And I just want to make it very clear that they're not the ones coming up with curriculum. They're not assigning homework. They're not writing lesson plans or anything like that.
Totally. We have very smart and educated people who are doing all of that. And I'm just hoping that I can find this document. I should have it right on hand. Let's ask another question and I'll come back to that, because we have a really beautiful document that shows our curriculum outline that
that would be helpful, and we'll get you to show it, and then we'll post it in the chat as well. But Sarah, did you have something to add? I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, while she was looking for that, that our system is called Prenda World, and all of our curriculum is kind of housed in Prenda World. So we've got, and someone said something the other day on one of our team calls that we're never going to be satisfied with like, oh, Prenda's done, this is it. I mean, our team is constantly behind the scenes. What else is out there? What else can we? What needs perfecting? What can we tweak? What can we do to make this the best best program to help our children become the most, have the most success in the system. So a lot of attention and time and work goes into deciding on curriculum and putting that together, and then handing that to the guide and in a very organized way. So the guide, very little prep time. It's not like the guide is got, up all night grading papers and preparing for lessons. I mean, that is all provided to them. And like I said, parents know where their kids are at any time, which is really cool. And a lot of parents I know really are concerned about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I found it, but I'm trying to figure out how to share it. But let me just tell you that a lot of our curriculum, the way Prenda works when it comes to curriculum is, okay, I just found it. Let me share it really quickly.
Perfect, yeah. So to those of you all who are jumping on and asking these questions about the curriculum specifically and asking if guides are responsible for curriculum, check this out really quickly. It's gonna be really helpful for you.
So I'm going to walk through this.
Sure.
Prenda is not a one size fits all situation. Guides, parents, and students work together to find the best options. Together, this GPS team can figure out where a student is, where they're going, and the best route to get there. This document contains all of our current Conquer Mode curriculum options. So this is specifically that first part of the day.
Right.
So it shows what the grade levels, the appropriate grade levels, like how much they would do in a day. So in math, it's Zern, Dreambox, Khan Academy, CTC Math, and iReady Math. Mm-hmm. So Zern is our primary for our K2s, and Khan Academy is our primary for older kids. Writing, there are a number of writing options, and we've created, so we call it the Prenda. This is our curriculum that's coming, the Prenda Writer's Cookbook, skills-based writing tutorial. So that's something that we've built. And then for language, No Red Ink, Lexia Power Up is a junior high thing, and Lexia Core 5 is K5. So, and then reading, Treasure Hunt Reading is our literacy tool for our K2s that we've developed. And then we have a bookshelf where they can choose books from there, but they can also bring their book and put in the ISBN, and it pops up, and they can track the book they're reading, Light Sail and iReady Reading. And then they can do other elective things. And then we use iReady testing and then standardized testing if it's state funded. So I can share this document with you. But the cool thing is, what I was going to say is, the way Prenda does curriculum is, we have a need. Let's say we know we need a math curriculum. So we go out into the marketplace and find what meets our needs of being mastery based and standards aligned. Ruth, am I in the weeds too much?
I don't think so. I think this is helpful, but do share that with me if you don't mind, and we'll be sure to put it on our Facebook page so that everyone can go look at it. Yeah.
And we find tools that work. Well, when it came to writing, we didn't. And our big concern was that traditional education, what we found is that there's a decent amount of proficiency, but like they're excellent at soul crushing little young writers. Like we have third graders that would be just frozen in front of a blank piece of paper because of pain that's happened in their earlier education. Even at third grade, there's been so much pain around trying to do that. And I know adults that still struggle to like feel confident sending an email because of something that happened at an early age. And so it took us a long time to really develop what we wanted to do for writing. And so we created that. And then all of Collaborate and Create is it's curriculum that we've designed ourselves.
Wow. No, I think that answered the question well. If anyone has any further questions, please let us know. But we will share that document to show exactly where the curriculum is coming from. And I do want to add in, as we're implementing this in Arkansas, we do have some guides in Arkansas that are raring to go. So those folks who are interested in having your child in a micro school, if you're interested in becoming a guide, call us, email us. We'll make sure to put all our contact info in the chat, but we want to work with you. We think this is just an incredible concept, and we know this won't work for everyone. And we're still ironing out details as we are in every program. It never really ends. It can always be better. And so we're just trying to offer just yet another opportunity and another option for families. Let me see where I'm at, because we are just flying through, it seems like. How are parents, if parents don't have the time or the ability to become a guide, if they just have to work or whatever, or maybe that's just not their calling, how can they still be involved? Do they receive reports on what their kids are doing? How does that work?
That's a great question. So one thing I would say very primarily if they can find a guide, if there's somebody in their community that I was just on a call with somebody in Colorado, and she asked about safety and sending their kids to like a stranger's house. And I said, the surest way to make sure that that's safe is find someone you already trust to be a guide. Like, let it be hyper local. Let it be somebody in your neighborhood that your kid can walk or ride their bike to their house. That is the most ideal situation when you already know that guide and trust them. We have some really great like processes where we ensure the safety of children. For you as a parent, there's a really great opportunity to like find a guide. So that's one thing I would say is help find your child's guide. Also, we send the kids at the end of every week have a report that they send to their fans. It's like to your fans, and it's what they've accomplished academically in their week, their favorite writing, what their favorite create project was, and they email that to their fans on the last day of school every week. And then there are other places where if a parent isn't working full-time, they could talk to the guide about coming in and just being involved in some way or another throughout the week, or once a month, or helping with field trips. So there are a lot of ways for parents to be involved.
That's what I think is really cool about our Prenda micro schools here in Arizona, and I imagine they'd be the same anywhere, is that there's a lot of opportunity for outside the classroom activities, for field trips and things like that. You know, we've got classrooms up in Flagstaff, which in Arizona is kind of our get out of the heat spot. They've got cross country team they've kind of formed between a few of the micro schools. So the micro schools get together and go hiking and do all sorts of things. I went to visit micro schools in Maricopa, which is kind of a tiny, well, I guess not so small anymore. I think we're going to have 20 something micro schools there, but there was 3 micro schools, and they were close enough together that they could walk to the little park in the community and enjoy recess together as a group every day. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for maybe parents to help with that, or, you know, with the field trips, like Rochelle said, but there's a lot of opportunity for micro schools to get together within, you know, if they're within that distance, to be able to, you know, to do cool things.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that part about fans. Like, I wish I had fans that I could email every Friday and tell them all the things I did all week. I mean, I love it. But that's
maybe you should do that. Maybe you should figure out who your it's Brene Brown's Square Squad. Figure out who your fans are and start sending them your report.
I have 0, but I will say, I mean, how empowering for kids to be able to just express what they're learning and share it. And I mean, that's just, gosh, what a cool concept. And I do want to say, I'm seeing a ton of questions in the chat. We're trying to get to all of them. Time always flies when we're having fun, so we're going to do this again. But I will say that this is available. This microschooling concept is available to all Arkansas students, and we can help you set it up. Again, contact our office. And we are working to set up a scholarship program to help fund this for low-income families. It's available to all, but we understand some folks may not have the means, and we're working through those details. So hang with us. I mean, if you're familiar with our organization, you followed what we've done with the Succeed Scholarship Program and how we've worked with the legislature to get that through, to get that funding. And we just love working with families throughout Arkansas to make sure that every family and every child is given an opportunity to have an education option that best works for them. So just know that we're working through those details, and we're excited to share with you all everything that comes of this. But we are working to make sure that our most disadvantaged students have access to this option, as we do with all the other options, all the other education options throughout Arkansas. And we know we're throwing a lot of information out. We're sorry about that, but there's just a lot to share, and we want to tell you all about it because we really, really, really love. We love microschooling. We think it's a fantastic option. We really are enjoying working side by side with Prenda to bring it to you. So continue asking questions. And again, if we don't get to them all in the next 10 minutes or so, we will follow back up with you and get your questions answered. But I just wanted to touch on those really quickly. And our website as well has many of these details written. Let me see. We bounce around. Rochelle, you were bouncing around your slides, and I'm bouncing around on questions. I'm trying to catch everybody while we can. So I mean, really, what's the first step? You know, so of course, here in Arkansas, we want folks to contact us. And then how do you walk me through kind of the training for the guides? Is that done through you all? And then how quickly, you know, does something like this come about?
Totally. So in places where we don't have public funding, there's a private pay option called Prenda Family. That's what we've like arranged outside. When we looked at our bandwidth and we said, do we support private pay micro schools? or do we use that bandwidth to seek funding for all students? We went with the latter. And so Prenda Family is our homeschool offering. And so what we've done in the states that we don't have public funding, the parents can sign up for Prenda Family. It's $100 per student per month, and then $75 for any additional for siblings per month after that. So once they do that, the parent will go through the training. So all the parents will go through the training, and if they want to hire a guide, then the guide will also go through the training, and they can informally form one of these micro schools. As soon as Arkansas has a really consistent place of public funding, which I know they're working on diligently, then we'll be able to bring in like actual micro schools that are supported with mentors and things like that. Right now, they're Prenda Family groups that are self-collecting into micro schools.
I like it.
Oh, and to answer your question about timing, they could be up and running once they've gone through including going through the training. If everybody was like, hey, let's do this, within a week and a half to 2 weeks, they could be ready to go and starting micro schools.
Right. Yeah, perfect. I mean, that's so quick. Is this idea, is microschooling adaptable for special needs children? That's a question I keep seeing, and it's definitely important to touch.
I love this. I'm going to take this question. It's
Sarah's like on the edge of her seat. I can't wait.
Oh, my heart, like that is sort of, my heart is for kids with learning differences. And yes. I think that's what's so brilliant and what's so amazing about Prenda in particular is that a lot of the accommodations, so I'll start with that, right? Like a family that says, okay, I have an IEP, or I have a 504 plan. My kiddo has, autism, or my kiddo has a learning delay, dyslexia, whatever it is. They'll have an IEP that has some accommodations, right? Maybe it's extra, timed test taking, extra time on a test, or sitting closer to the teacher, or more frequent breaks, or, more time to work on things. Most accommodations are naturally occurring for every Prenda student. So it's almost like every Prenda student has all of these accommodations just in the system, because they are working at their own pace in this mastery-based software at their own level. They, we take breaks. We take lots. If you need a break, have a little brain break. That there's no pressure there. So, and a lot of the kids, need to take a break. Okay, I'm going to step away from this for a minute. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go jump around. I'm going to come back, and then I'm, refocus. So a lot of those accommodations take place naturally in the system, which I think is so cool. And I love that. And then for other kids in Arizona, we are really fortunate to have a charter partner that enables the kids to receive some services if they need services. But a lot of these things just naturally in the Prenda model are addressed in terms of, working at their own pace and being able to catch up and have the time to do so without the pressure. So, so that what I really love about Prenda is the ability to, work with all learners of all different, learning styles. So
Yeah.
There's a kid, I was just visiting a class. I was 2 doors down from a class today, and there's a kid in that class who's dyslexic, and he's now in 4th grade or 5th. And he's really, school has been very damaging for him. And he went in there, and his writing is really difficult to decipher. And they were doing that early last year, the first 2 weeks of school thing. And it was like writing in front of other kids. And one of the other students said, oh, Lincoln's writing in code. And it just like gave him allowance to write however he needed to write. And he became so confident in himself as a learner, where he had been so like squashed by the system. Anyway, that was a long answer but I think it's important to know that they just get a chance to see. One of the things we find is that things like dyslexia, ADD, all these things, that they have their challenges, but the backside of them is like the gold of that person. Like there are beautiful things that come with those. And if we can help them have the tools to minimize the challenges and really find the gold in those kids, it's really powerful.
Well, and I think I know we've got a lot of questions, but I do want to add, talking to the moms out there and the dads out there, if, whose kids have struggled because of some learning differences and have felt like they didn't fit in a classroom and have been, they feel like they're, not, maybe they're worthless and I'm dumb and I'm stupid. They say those things. And to those parents, what I think is so cool in Prenda is that, Rochelle's talked about this story about a kiddo who can come and feel so comfortable with those around them that they have the ability to say, yeah, you know what, my brain, I learn a little differently. I struggle with this, and feel comfortable enough to say that this is a struggle, and then to feel empowered, and that their peers are cheering them on and encouraging them and just embracing them for who they are, and they're not having to pretend to be anything they're not. I think that's something super powerful. And as a mom, and I do have a little boy that has a learning challenge, and it sometimes breaks your heart. You want your kids to fit in, and you don't want them to be, you want them to have friends. And some of our families have said, my kid for the first time feels like they have friends, and they feel like they have somebody patting them on the back, and it's not just mom patting them on the back, you're, doing good, but you have other kids cheering you on too and supporting you. So I think that's really cool.
So important. And I love, you both made the point of just how damaging it can be for kids to be just told they can't do it, or made to feel like they're not smart enough. We've certainly seen that in Arkansas, with a lot of kids that take advantage of our Succeed Scholarship program. And I keep going back to that because, I think Succeed Scholarship program, microschooling, all of these, the thing they all have in common is that it's providing options, and it's providing an opportunity for students to get the best education they can, whatever that may look like. And we just don't believe that families shouldn't have that option. Why shouldn't? It seems like a no-brainer. But we've seen kids who just struggled in one school, and it's not always in public school. It may be in another school. It just, certain learning environments work better for certain children. I'm sure we've all had personal experiences ourselves. And so I love that. Thank you for answering that question so openly and honestly and passionately, because it's so incredibly important, and it obviously affects a lot of families. So thank you to folks who asked the questions. We're running short on time. I do want to end it in really quickly. I have two things, and we're gonna get them in 2 minutes ish. The first one, because COVID's a thing, it's a real thing. That's why we're talking about this. That's why we're talking about all sorts of options. What are sort of the safety measures that are put in place? I know Rochelle, you talked, when you were talking about guides, you mentioned, of course, that they would have to there are certain qualifications and things like that for safety purposes. Can you touch on that really quickly, and then sort of touch on the safety health side of it during COVID? How is that being addressed? How have you seen that be addressed lately?
Cool. So the safety, the just general safety, and then COVID specific? Yes. Okay. So general safety, we background check and fingerprint all of our guides. So most schools just do fingerprint, at least here. So we do both of those things. We have a really clear understanding of history. And we do a really extensive interview and getting to know them process, as well as having, they give us 3 references. Inside of their homes, they sign a safety affidavit that guns and medications are locked up, alcohol isn't where it can be accessed. Here it matters, probably doesn't there. Pools have to have a fence around them. I don't know how many pools are in Arkansas. And so they go, and then the guides have liability insurance. So their big pieces are background check, fingerprint, clearance card, liability insurance, and then their safety affidavit, making sure that their space is safe for kids to be in. And then specific to COVID, there's a couple of things. One is just the general, no-brainer. Everyone washes their hands when they come in. Everyone uses hand sanitizers. Don't share food. Keep your belongings separate. Like in my daughter's class, her guide got lockers. So every kid has a locker that they put their stuff in at her house. And then more specifically, depending on state regulations, and what it's a really tricky thing with masks. Kids need to be able to see adults to attach. So so having a mask that is clear, if it's in a time and space where they need to be wearing a mask, having a mask that's clear so they can see the expressions and the faces, social distancing wherever that makes sense. And if it's a time where they're just going to be together, having them in masks, but having it, creating as much opportunity to not be in a mask as they possibly can, doing as much work. Like we have classrooms in Arizona that could meet outside right now. on the front porch instead of inside, where they can create more space. That's not happening in Phoenix, but it will in the winter. So just creating as much, it's having common sense about how do we keep kids safe, and how do we not have kids take home COVID to family members that may be at risk to that. And one of the things that a lot of our micro schools have done is they've come together and they've agreed to a way of living around COVID. Like, we only go to these places, we don't go to these places. School is the only place we send our kids to. So they can come into agreement with each other about with their risk level, what they're comfortable with.
Right. That's so important. Thank you for touching on that. We are out of time. I wanted to ask you your favorite success story. I know there's a video for that though on your YouTube page, and I'm going to share it. And it's one of the success stories. And what I really enjoyed seeing is the success story straight from families and from kids and from guides. I was so touched. I think her name's Jessica, one of the guides, who was a teacher and just sort of just was looking, something's not right, not in the school, but just in I guess her feelings about her calling. And she said when she learned about Prenda and microschooling, she said she turned to her husband and was like, I found it, this is it. And so now she's a guide. So there certainly are some teachers that are guides, but thank you for clarifying where your curriculum comes from. And we will share that. I've seen a few other folks ask who I think might have missed it. We will share that within this chat as soon as we get off. But Sarah and Rochelle, thank you so much for spending so much time with us. Y'all are in Arizona, so y'all are 2 hours behind me. So really we could just keep rolling. I mean, it's only 6 o'clock here, but we do want to be respectful of people's time. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and watched and asked questions. We appreciate them all, and we will get back to you if we didn't address it tonight. That we literally had like probably 20 other questions we didn't get to because we just completely ran out of time. But it's a lot of info. Again, check out our social media pages and our website, thereformalliance.org, and y'all's is prendaschool.
Prendaschool.com.
And there's a ton of info on there, and we try to share as much as we can on our page as well. But check out the websites, send us a message, tweet at us, whatever you need to do, call us, email us. We will make sure you have all of our contact info. We want you to call us. We want to work with you. Do not ever feel like you're a bother. We want to offer this option to the incredible students in Arkansas as we get through this COVID-19 time. But we're in it together. We're working with great organizations like Prenda to offer options to students and to families. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for asking your questions. And we will see you all soon. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.